It's Kent with Panama Equity Real Estate trying to bring you a little bit of an update on what's going on. Working from the home office today, but I can tell you that the riots are finally wrapping up. Not sure if you guys have been following it. Obviously, if you're living in Panama, you've seen and maybe been affected by what's going on the street or what had been going on in the streets in terms of the protests. Those are finally coming to a conclusion and hopefully won't be around again anytime soon. And for those of you who weren't living through that, it was kind of annoying. But the nice thing about Panama is that we don't really have like a whole lot of violence and like police with rubber bullets and tear gas. I mean, it did get to that in a few areas in the interior of the country. Panama City, for the most part, was pretty stable. I mean, we had some issues on Balboa Avenue. Point being is they were protesting for three different reasons in no particular order. One, cost of living, including gasoline and corruption, right? Among other things, or I guess kind of wrapped up into one with the cost of living being gasoline, medicine, etc. Some of those issues have been resolved. Others have not. I mean, Panama has always been a bit of an oligarchy where you sort of have, 10 families running the show, controlling the economy. But hey, it's worked. It's still very safe. It's not as cheap as it used to be. But yeah, that's a bit of an update on what was going on literally on the street. Fortunately, those protests have ended. Of course, CNN and Fox News and all of the United States and even European cable channels love to jump on those type of stories. So you only see the worst. For the most part, it was people showing up with drums and pailas, which are like big ways to make soup. Pailas like an open burner. So it was a party. Don't get me wrong. People were out on the street, just showing their discontent. Point being, that's come to an end. So what's going on with the real estate market? Because I'm not a political commentator. I'm a real estate guy. So, okay, what's the latest? In Panama City, prices have started to finally go up. I moved here in 07. Pricing was crazy from like 07 to, let's call it, 2009. I mean, I've walked you guys through the pricing evolution in the past. Today's market is the following. For example, brand new 2-bedroom on Balboa Avenue in a project we like, Nuovo. Of course, we sell existing inventory as well, but to give you guys an example, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 106-meter, 31st floor apartment, ocean view, nice amenities, blah, 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 brand new, Balboa Avenue. These days in the Nuovo project, you're looking at like asking price just under 400,000 or about 3,800 per square meter, which works out to be, let's call it 3,500 or $350 a square foot. Not as cheap as what it used to be. Now, that's brand new. You can also get something existing, similar price, maybe 10, 12 years old. So amenities not as flash, kitchen's not as nice. Same area, Balboa Avenue, in a building like Grand Bay, for example, about the same floor plan. You could get that for almost $100,000 less. So you figure less than 280, 250 if you're not looking right out at the water, maybe even closer to 220, 230. So there's always a premium. What else can I tell you? Costa del Este, of all the neighborhoods in Panama City, we've seen the most price increase in Costa del Este. I think that's because it hit rock bottom in the pandemic. Costa del Este market is mostly driven by a lot of corporate relocation. That's where you have Caterpillar, who else is out there? Copa, Adidas, a lot of the big multinational corporations that bring in people and then either buy corporate properties or lease corporate rentals. So, of course, that being a driver of the market, that and, of course, foreign expats coming in and locals for that matter, appreciate Costa del Este, which is a suburb about 2 miles from Panama City downtown. It's Panama City. Costa del Este is probably the most the fastest recovered neighborhood because, guys, our prices went down. In the pandemic, pricing probably came down 10, 15% at least. Rents maybe even 20 to 30%. I'll have to watch some of my old Facebook Lives to remember what it was like in those times. But pricing came down for obvious reasons. Panama is a city of foreigners, a country of foreigners for that matter. We've got, I think the last population number is about 4 million. And I would say, already 500,000 of those are going to be counted, and probably another 500,000 are not maybe necessarily surveyed or not necessarily full-time residents, but come and go. Point being is the Panama real estate market has always been driven by foreign world economic trends, whether that's, uncertainty geographically, places like Venezuela, Colombia, back in the 80s and 90s, it was Nicaragua. In the early 2000s, it was a big migration of folks from the US because that's when Panama was still super duper expensive. I'm not going to give you a history of the Panama real estate market unless you want one. You feel free to comment and ask questions to keep this from being a monologue, and we always try to answer questions after the fact as well. But what else can I tell you? Market nuggets. So Trump Ocean Club has also seen about a 15% price increase in terms of the purchase price in the last 9 months. So that's an interesting trend. A lot of times these buildings Panama is very building specific. The Trump Ocean Club, or they just call it Ocean Club now. Some people call it JW or Marriott. It's, 700 units, 1 to 3 bedroom penthouse, average price per square meter there these days, around 3,000 a square meter or more, depending on what you're looking at. Of course, pricing in Panama, if you're looking at condos, always, and it's probably the same everywhere in the world, it's what's your views, what's your amenities, how old is the building, what floor are you on, how boutique is the building, do you have 10 neighbors on your floor, do you have 2? All of those are factors, and they're a factor in Panama. Point being is Punta Pacifica, specifically Trump Ocean Club, and to an extent the areas around it, Trump or Ocean Club or JW Marriott, depending on who you're asking, has always been an investor-driven building. I would say there's probably maybe 20% of that building, if that, are full-time owner occupied. The rest, 80%, investors. So that's a lot of tenants, a lot of empty units that stay empty because people from Venezuela or Colombia or Europe just prepare to put money in Panama. It's on the dollar. Maybe the asset doesn't appreciate, low holding costs. I mean, it does depend on when you bought. Oops, my microphone got disconnected here. How's the audio? Can you guys hear me okay? We'll switch to a different one. Might get better audio there. Check 1 2. Anyway, sorry for that, guys. What was I talking about? Trump Ocean Club, pricing, what's driving it. So general trends in Panama. I mean, it's August, right? So a lot of our American buyers, are looking at back to school. A lot of our European buyers as well, kind of finishing up the European holiday. Typically August, folks travel in and around Europe, but maybe they definitely come to Panama. We're still seeing a lot of Germans, a lot of Dutch, some Brits, not as many, a lot of Germans. I don't know if there's social unrest, pricing, whatever. Americans continue to buy, Canadians continue to buy. I think, the political climate in the U.S. is tricky. So, of course, that brings people down. What else can I tell you? Happy to answer questions, too. That's kind of the reason we like to do these. Sometimes we announce them. Sometimes I just hop on between showings. So, or between meetings and whatever. So we talked about Costa del Este. We talked about Trump Ocean Club. We talked about some of the drivers of the market. Now, the nice thing is with Panama is we're seeing inventory coming down through both absorption and new supply. A lot of these new projects simply didn't start during the pandemic, and some of them got canceled. As a existing property owner, you love that because, hey, less supply coming on the market. That's a good thing. Demand has been pretty steady, in some cases increasing. We had a super busy first and second quarter for that matter. A lot of pre-construction sales. Costco is very hot right now. Hey, Fred. Okay, thank you. Mahalo. Aloha. Yeah, so, that's general trends, company-wide trends in terms of our setup right now. We are currently managing over 100 properties and full occupancy. So, that happens for Todd Cutter. Ladies and gentlemen, may I stop the broadcast right now? If you ever need anything in Costa Rica, on this chat, find Todd Cutter. They run Two Costa Rica Real Estate. He is he's a virtual mentor of mine. He might not even know it. Ceiling market. So in terms of ceiling market, if you were talking about, Todd, sort of the highest price point that we think could be achieved or what we've seen in the last 12 months, man, we've actually just this morning on the sales meeting would say we've sort of entered a new pricing threshold in Balboa Avenue for brand new construction, which is 3,800 a square meter. I mean, I didn't see that in 2010, which had sort of previously been our high. Back then, it was about 3,000 a square meter on Balboa Avenue. Now, in other parts of the city, of course, Santa Maria and Casco Viejo are still our most expensive neighborhoods. I would say that Santa Maria, of course, it's always a function of the size of the property, right? Generally, price per square meter goes a bit lower as you get into larger properties, especially in the same building. So smaller units might have a higher price per square meter or price per square foot. Casco and Santa Maria are kind of tied right now. Actually, no, that's not true. Casco Viejo, the Santa Familia development, is still selling at $5,000 a square meter. And that's sort of the current ceiling, Todd. Thank you for the question and for tuning in, sir. Okay, Rhino, how much influence does the U.S. have over Panama? Let's highlight your comment so I can read it. Were there any examples in the past of the U.S. forcing them to do certain? I mean, I feel like the U.S. has influence everywhere except certain countries, right? China and Russia come to mind. No, I mean, the current and the last president played diplomatic ties gingerly between China and the U.S., specifically the last president, Juan Carlos Varela. I would say we even shifted probably more to Chinese, but that's since shifted. We finally have, the U.S. finally has a ambassador to Panama. We had a charge d'affaires for many years during the Trump administration. So I would say in terms of historical timing, Rhino, Panama is more in alignment than what it has been in the last, say, 7 years with Panama. Now, in terms of sharing data, blocking bank accounts, Panama is a bit of a labyrinth when it comes to opening up bank accounts. And I also think that it's still a bit of a labyrinth in terms of reporting. You don't see a whole lot of I'm not an expert on this, but I can only speak firsthand and from clients' experience. The U.S. is not really interested in onesie twosie, other than what we declare. Obviously, you have to declare any foreign earned property, foreign earned income, foreign held and controlled corporations. That's just, I'm an American, so by nature of the requirements, obligations we have as U.S. citizens. But no, I mean, forcing them to do certain things, golly, I would welcome anybody else who would want to comment on that. But I think the U.S. has an influence, of course, ever since FACTA. That's been a lot more of a compliance issue for the banks, which means it's harder to open up bank accounts, but certainly not impossible. Sometimes large transactions get questioned coming inside and out of Panama, but they're not currency controls because we're on the dollar, obviously. You are free to move your money here and there, but there are certain disclosure requirements that both countries have. So if that answer was helpful at all, or perhaps if you can clarify your question, I'm happy to, wrap on that a little bit. You're welcome. Thank you for asking the question. And guys, I try to keep this, brief, especially when it's a monologue. So as we always do, try to have folks back on. I think Matt Marks will be joining me with the developer later on this week or early next week. We'll get Catherine on for a mountain update. They're both busy. We are, it's things are selling, guys, at the high end, in the middle end as well, mid-market. $200,000 to $300,000 for a condo, $200,000 to $300,000 for a house. Those are still moving. We're also doing high dollar transactions, 1.1 recent closing, 1.5 recent closing, 4 million recent closing. So stuff's happening. And it's not just us, it's the market in general. So if you ever want to share any comments after these broadcasts, I always jump in, or someone from the team always jumps in. Thank you for joining us. To Costa Rica Real Estate, shout out to Todd Cutter. Fantastic organization. If you guys ever need anything in Costa Rica, we're here. If you ever need anything in Panama. So thanks. Have a great day. Cheers.